Think about the last time you wanted to give up. Maybe it was a language that felt too difficult. Maybe it was a goal that seemed too far away, a dream that was slowly becoming too heavy to carry. You were standing right at the edge, and something inside you whispered, "Just stop! Just let it go. Nobody will know. Nobody will judge you." But you didn't stop, or perhaps you almost did. Either way, you are here now, listening, and that itself tells me something important about you. Welcome to English Through Great Stories. Today, we explore one of the most powerful forces in human life, the psychology of never giving up. Chapter 1. The moment before you quit. There is a moment that every single person knows. It does not matter who you are, where you come from, or what you are trying to achieve. At some point in your life, you arrive at a place where everything inside you says, "I cannot do this anymore. This is too hard. This is too painful. This is taking too long." Psychologists call this the wall. Athletes know it well, writers know it, students know it, parents know it. It is the moment when the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels so enormous, so impossible, that your mind starts to look for the exit. It starts to build a reason to stop. And here is what makes this moment so dangerous. The wall does not always feel like failure. Sometimes it feels like wisdom. Your mind says, "Be realistic. You've tried hard enough. Some people are just not meant for this." And those thoughts sound very calm, very logical, very reasonable. That is exactly why they are so dangerous. Here is a question I want you to think about as you listen today. Have you ever quit something and then later wondered what might have happened if you had continued? Most of us have, and most of us carry that quiet wondering for a very long time. Today, we are going to talk about what happens when people choose not to quit and what that choice can mean. Chapter 2. What science says about giving up. For a long time, people believed that talent was something you were born with. Either you had it or you didn't. Either you were intelligent or you weren't. Either you were gifted or you were ordinary. This belief felt natural. It felt like common sense. But science tells a very different story. In the 1990s, a psychologist named Carol Dweck at Stanford University began studying how children respond to difficulty. She noticed something remarkable. Some children, when faced with a hard problem, became more motivated. They leaned in. They tried harder, but other children, when faced with the same problem, shut down. They gave up. They lost confidence. Why? What was the difference? The difference was not intelligence. It was not family background. It was not even how difficult the problem was. The difference was a belief. Children who believed their abilities could grow, who believed that effort and practice made them better, those children persisted. Dweck called this the growth mindset, and her research changed the world of education forever. The opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe that their qualities are carved in stone. They think, "I am either good at this or I am not, and if I fail, it proves I am not." So they avoid challenges, they avoid effort. Because effort, to them, means risk, and risk means possible proof of their limitations. But neuroscience, the science of the brain, supports Dweck's findings in a beautiful way. The brain is not fixed. It is not a machine that stops developing after childhood. The brain can change, grow, and build new connections throughout your entire life. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. Neuro, meaning the brain. Plasticity, meaning the ability to change shape. Every time you practice something, every time you struggle and try again, your brain forms new pathways. It literally rewires itself. This means that the very act of not giving up, the act of continuing despite difficulty, is physically changing your brain. You are, in the most real and scientific sense, becoming more capable with every attempt. There is one more concept I want to share with you here. Dweck discovered something called the power of not yet. When a student fails a test, instead of writing fail on their paper, she suggested writing not yet. Two small words, but they carry enormous meaning. Not yet says, you are on a journey. You haven't arrived, but you are moving. And moving is everything. Chapter 3. The Stories of Those Who Refused. History is full of people who refused to stop. People who were told they were not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, and who chose, quietly and stubbornly, to continue anyway. Their stories are not just inspiring. They are proof that the human will to persist can change the world. Consider Thomas Edison. Today, we remember him as the man who invented the light bulb, but the story behind that invention is rarely told in full. Edison failed over 10,000 times before he created a working light bulb. 10,000 attempts, 10,000 moments where he could have said, "This is not possible," but he didn't. When a reporter asked him about his failures, Edison smiled and said, "I have not failed. I have simply found 10,000 ways that do not work." Think about Abraham Lincoln. Before he became one of the most celebrated presidents in American history, he lost 8 elections. His business failed. He suffered a nervous breakdown. He lost the people he loved most. By any measure, his life appeared to be a long series of defeats. And yet, he kept going. He kept standing up. He became the man who helped end slavery in America. J.K. Rowling. The name is now known around the world, but before Harry Potter found its audience, Rowling was a single mother living in poverty. Her manuscript was rejected by 12 different publishers. 12 times someone read her work and said, "No, not good enough." Move on. She did not move on. She submitted again, and the world received one of the most beloved stories ever written. And then there is Beethoven. The great composer began losing his hearing in his late 20s. For a musician, for someone whose entire life was built on sound, this was unimaginable. By his 40s, he was almost completely deaf, and yet it was during this period that he composed some of his most powerful and magnificent works, including the famous Ninth Symphony, written in silence, born from persistence. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. 27 years. For most of that time, he was kept in a small cell on Robben Island, doing hard labor, separated from his family. Many people expected him to come out broken. He came out transformed. He said that his years in prison gave him time to think, to refine his beliefs, to develop patience and wisdom. His suffering did not destroy his purpose. It deepened it. But let me also tell you about someone you will never read about in a history book, a woman named Maria. She grew up in a small town. She failed her university entrance exam twice. Her family told her to find a simple job and stop dreaming. She waited a year. She studied harder than she had ever studied before. She passed on her third attempt. She is now a doctor. Her patients adore her. She has never forgotten what it felt like to fail, because it taught her compassion. These stories, famous and ordinary, share one thing in common. The people in them did not have superhuman strength. They were not free from doubt or fear. They were not immune to pain. What made them different was a single choice, made again and again, to continue. Even when continuing was the hardest thing in the world. Consider also the story of Michael Jordan, widely regarded as the greatest basketball player who ever lived. What many people forget is that Jordan was not selected for the varsity basketball team at his high school. Instead, he was placed on the junior team, passed over, told, in effect, that he was not yet good enough. That single moment could have ended a legend before it began. Instead, Jordan went home that afternoon, closed his bedroom door, and cried. And then, he decided, he practiced every morning before school. He trained with an obsession that his teammates found almost alarming. And when he was asked years later what kept him going, he said something that has stayed with me ever since. I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. I have been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. Then there is Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, she was fired from her job as a television reporter and told she was unfit for TV. She was told her presence was not compelling enough, that her voice did not carry authority. Today, she is one of the most recognizable and respected voices in the world. What strikes me about these stories, and about all the stories we have examined in this chapter, is not that these people never doubted themselves. They did. What is remarkable is that they made a different decision about what doubt meant. To them, doubt was not a signal to stop. It was a signal that the work still mattered, that something important was at stake, and that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. Chapter 4. The Hidden Power of Failure. We live in a world that celebrates success. We see the trophies, the finished products, the smiling faces in photographs, but we rarely see what came before. We rarely see the years of quiet struggle, the private disappointments, the late nights spent wondering if any of it was worth it, and because we don't see that part, we begin to believe that success comes easily to others, but never to us. This is one of the most damaging illusions of our time, because the truth is, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the process. It is not a wall that stops you. It is a door, sometimes a painful one, that opens the next room of understanding. Every failure contains information. Every mistake teaches something that success cannot. Researchers who study learning have found something fascinating. When students make mistakes and then receive feedback, their brains show significantly more activity than when students answer correctly on the first attempt. The brain actually works harder in the presence of error. It pays more attention. It forms stronger memories. In other words, you learn more from getting it wrong than from getting it right. Think about a child learning to walk. They fall down many times, but nobody looks at a falling baby and says, "Well, clearly walking is not for you." We expect falling. We understand that falling is how walking is learned. So why, when we grow up, do we suddenly decide that falling means we should stop trying? When did failure become something to hide from rather than something to learn from? Consider also what happens in the world of art. Vincent van Gogh painted more than 900 works during his lifetime. He sold exactly one of them while he was alive. He lived in poverty, struggled with profound mental illness, and was largely ignored by the artistic world of his time. And yet he continued to paint, not for recognition, not for money, but because the act of creation was itself his way of persisting. Today, his paintings hang in the greatest museums on earth. Millions of people travel across continents to stand in front of his canvases. The man who was told his work had no value has left behind one of the most valuable artistic legacies in history. What these examples teach us is something subtle but important. The feedback you receive in the middle of the journey is not necessarily the truth about where the journey ends. Failure in the present moment is not a verdict on your future. It is data. It is a signal. It says, try differently, try again, try from a new angle. In Japan, there is an art form called kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, the artist celebrates them. The broken places become the most beautiful parts. This philosophy applies to human lives as well. The places where you have broken, where life has cracked you open, are not the places you should hide. They are often the places from which your greatest wisdom and strength emerge. Do not be ashamed of your broken places. They are perhaps your most valuable ones. I want to ask you something personal now. What failure in your own life has taught you the most? Not the failure you are most proud of, but the one that hurt the most, the one you still think about. Because I suspect that if you sit quietly with that memory, you will find something valuable inside it, something that made you wiser, stronger, or more human than you were before. Chapter 5. Building your resilience muscle. Resilience. It is a word we hear often. But what does it actually mean? The word comes from the Latin resilia, to spring back, like a tree in a storm that bends dramatically but does not break, like a rubber band that stretches and then returns to its original shape. Resilience is not about never falling. It is about the ability to rise again after you fall. The good news: and I want you to hear this clearly, is that resilience is not a fixed trait. You are not born with a set amount of it that never changes. Resilience is more like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Every time you face a difficulty and choose to continue, you are training your resilience. You are making yourself more capable of facing the next challenge. Psychologist Angela Duckworth spent years studying what makes people succeed in difficult environments: military training, national spelling bees, schools in very challenging neighborhoods. She found that talent and intelligence were not the most important predictors. The most important quality was what she called grit. Grit is the combination of passion and perseverance for long-term goals. It is the ability to keep going, not just for a day or a week, but for years. So how do you build this muscle? How do you develop grit in your own life? Research and experience suggest several important practices. The first is to find your why. When you know deeply and clearly why something matters to you, it becomes far harder to abandon. Purpose is fuel. Without it, even the most talented people run dry. With it, even the most ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. The second practice is to make your goals small. Not small in ambition, but small in steps. When your goal feels enormous, break it into pieces you can actually manage today. Not this year, not this month, today. What is the one small thing you can do right now? Progress, even tiny progress, creates momentum, and momentum is what keeps you moving when motivation has faded. The third practice is to build a community. Resilience is not always a solo journey. The people around you matter enormously. Find people who believe in the possibility of growth. Spend time with those who encourage you to continue, not those who remind you of every reason to stop. Malala Yousafzai, who was shot by the Taliban at 15 years old for demanding the right to education for girls, has spoken many times about the power of community. The teachers, the activists, the ordinary people who refuse to let her story end. And the fourth practice, perhaps the most overlooked, is to rest. Resilience does not mean ignoring your limits. It does not mean punishing yourself with endless effort. A muscle that never rests does not grow stronger. It tears. Rest is not weakness. Rest is preparation. It is the space in which your brain processes and stores what you have learned, and your spirit gathers the strength to continue. There is one more practice I want to offer you, a fifth, which in some ways is the foundation on which all the others rest. It is the practice of self-compassion. When we struggle, when we fall short, when progress feels impossibly slow, the voice inside our heads can become extraordinarily harsh. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to a person we love. We call ourselves slow, incapable, foolish. We compare our inner doubts and private failures to other people's outward achievements, and we judge ourselves as lacking. Research by psychologist Dr. Kristin Neff at the University of Texas has shown something remarkable and perhaps surprising. People who practice self-compassion are actually more resilient than those who motivate themselves with self-criticism. They recover from failure more quickly. They try again with greater willingness. They do not lose themselves in shame or self-punishment. Self-compassion creates a safe, supportive feeling inside that allows a person to keep taking risks, because failure no longer feels like proof that you are not good enough. Self-compassion does not mean avoiding accountability. It does not mean making excuses for lack of effort. It means treating yourself with the same patient honesty that you would offer a person you deeply care for. It means acknowledging difficulty without making it bigger than it is. It means saying to yourself, "This is genuinely hard. I am struggling." And that is a human experience, not a personal failure. The next time you fall short of a goal you care about, try offering yourself the words you would offer a good friend, because you deserve that same kindness, and because kindness, directed inward, has the power to release something in you that criticism can never reach. Chapter 6. When everything says stop, don't. There are moments in life when the resistance is not just internal. It is not just the voice inside your own head saying you cannot do this. Sometimes the resistance comes from outside, from people you trust, from systems that seem designed to stop you, from circumstances so heavy that simply getting out of bed in the morning feels like an act of extraordinary courage. Imagine a young man in a small African village. No electricity, no library. His school closed because there was not enough money to keep it running. Most people around him had accepted this reality as permanent. But this young man walked to the nearest town, hours away, and used the library there to teach himself engineering from books he could barely understand at first. He built a windmill for his village, from broken bicycle parts and old wood. He brought electricity to his home when the world told him it was impossible. His name is William Kamkwamba. He was 14 years old. What strikes me most about stories like William's is not the result. It is the moment before the result, the moment when he was standing in front of that pile of broken parts with no teacher, no blueprint, and no guarantee of success. And he chose to begin anyway. That choice, to begin in uncertainty, is the most courageous choice a human being can make. Perhaps you are in your own version of that moment right now. Perhaps you are learning English in a country where English is not spoken around you. Perhaps you are working toward a promotion that seems always just out of reach. Perhaps you are raising children alone, or rebuilding a life after loss, or starting again after a mistake. Perhaps everything around you says, "Give up. It is not worth it." I want to tell you something that I believe with great conviction. The fact that it is hard does not mean it is wrong. The fact that it is taking a long time does not mean it is not happening. Growth is almost always invisible before it becomes visible. The seed underground does not look like a tree, but it is already becoming one. And here is a truth that science confirms, and that every persistent person eventually discovers. The hardest moment, the moment when quitting feels most rational, is almost always the moment just before the breakthrough. The runner hits the wall at mile 20. But the finish line is at mile 26. The student feels completely lost with a new grammar rule right before it suddenly clicks. The artist feels their work is hopeless just before they create their best piece. You do not always know how close you are, and that is precisely why you must not stop, not yet. Chapter 7. A Final Reflection. We have traveled a long way together in this story. We have stood at the edge of giving up. We have walked through the laboratories of psychologists who studied the human will. We have sat beside Edison in his workshop, beside Lincoln in his defeats, beside Beethoven in his silence. We have met a young boy in a village who looked at broken metal and saw possibility. And throughout all of it, one truth has remained constant. The capacity to continue is not reserved for extraordinary people. It is not a gift that only some people receive at birth. It is a human inheritance. It belongs to you as surely as it belonged to any of the remarkable people we have discussed today. The only question is whether you choose to claim it. Let me tell you about a young woman. Let us call her Amara. She was learning English as her fourth language, having grown up in a country where few opportunities were available and where the world's expectations of her were low. When she arrived in a new country as a young adult, she could barely construct a sentence. She sat in classrooms feeling invisible. She went home after long days and sometimes cried from the sheer exhaustion of it, the effort of thinking in a language that was not hers, of trying to make herself understood, of feeling always behind. She had every reason to stop. Every single day offered her a legitimate excuse to say, "I cannot do this. It is too much. I was not meant for this life." But she kept going, not with perfect confidence. She rarely felt confident, not with certainty. She was uncertain about almost everything. She kept going because something inside her had decided that her circumstances would not be allowed to write the final word about her future. 5 years later, Amara stood in front of an audience and delivered a speech in English that moved people to tears, not because she had suddenly found her voice, but because she had refused to let it be silenced. I share her story because I believe it is, in some way, your story too. You're doing something difficult. You have chosen to grow in a direction that requires real courage. And every lesson you have completed, every time you chose to listen one more time, every mistake you worked through, all of it has been building something real inside you. Something that belongs to you, something that no one can take away. I want to say something directly to you now, to you, wherever you are, whatever language you are still learning, whatever goal feels far away tonight. Your journey matters, not because of where you will end up, but because of who you are becoming along the way. Every difficult lesson, every frustrating mistake, every day you chose to try again, these things are shaping you into someone the world has never seen before. The Japanese have a beautiful philosophy called kaizen. It means continuous improvement through small, consistent steps, not a revolution, not a dramatic transformation overnight. Just a little better today than you were yesterday. Just one more page, one more practice, one more attempt. Repeated day after day, year after year. Kaizen becomes a life of extraordinary depth and achievement. There is a famous Japanese proverb that I love very much. It says, fall 7 times, stand up 8. Not, never fall. Not, be fearless and strong always. Fall 7 times. That is expected. That is human. But stand up 8. That is the choice. That is the will. That is the psychology of never giving up, expressed in 7 simple words. As we come to the end of today's story, I want to leave you with a reflection. Think about one thing in your life right now that you have been thinking about giving up. Just one thing. Hold it in your mind for a moment. Ask yourself, what would it mean not to succeed, but simply to continue? What would it mean to stay in the effort one more day, one more week? You do not need to see the whole staircase. You only need to take the next step. You do not need to feel confident. You only need to act despite the doubt. You do not need to be certain of the destination. You only need to be certain that stopping now is not the answer. Because the person you are becoming through every difficult, uncertain, courageous step is more valuable than any destination you could possibly reach. Thomas Edison lit up the world. Abraham Lincoln helped to free a nation. J.K. Rowling gave millions of children the gift of wonder. Beethoven gave the world music born from silence. Nelson Mandela gave South Africa the gift of dignity and freedom. Malala gave girls around the world the courage to demand their right to learn. And they all, every single one of them, had a moment when they almost stopped. We will never know what gifts are waiting on the other side of your perseverance. We will never know what you are capable of unless you keep going. And so I say to you, with great warmth and deep sincerity, keep going. Not because it is easy, but because you are worth it, because your story is not finished, because the world is waiting for what only you can bring. Thank you for listening to English Through Great Stories. You have just completed The Psychology of Never Giving Up. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Come back tomorrow. Keep listening, keep learning, keep going. Until next time, fall 7 times, stand up 8.